The email landed in my inbox like a perfectly aimed dart, sharp and precise. Subject: regarding Ethan and Madison's wedding celebration. It wasn't an invitation, of course. It was a formal, almost clinical, regret to inform you, from my mother, Vanessa, about the guest list for my older brother Ethan's wedding in Greece. Apparently, at 28 years old, I, Annabelle Joseph, was still too basic to fit their carefully curated aesthetic. I scrolled through the attached photos of the venue. A ridiculously opulent resort overlooking the Aegean Sea, Madison's chosen paradise for her $60,000 intimate ceremony. Every picture screamed privilege and perfection, a stark contrast to my own life, which currently consisted of a severance package and a growing pile of job applications. Ethan, my brother, always the golden child, was everywhere. There he was, 32, beaming in a tailored suit at some pre-wedding tasting, his arm around Madison, 29, who looked like she'd been sculpted from marble. My parents, Vanessa, 55, and Frankie, 57, were always in the background, beaming with pride. Ethan's achievements, his promotions, his engagement, they were celebrated like national holidays. My own smaller victories, met with a polite nod, if anything. My art school degree, my brief stint as a freelance designer, even just paying my rent on time, all just background noise to the Joseph Family Symphony starring Ethan. My phone buzzed. It was Trinity, my best friend, 27, who'd clearly seen the same email. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry," she texted, followed by a string of sad emojis. Their loss? Seriously? Who needs that kind of toxic energy? Let's just book a spa weekend somewhere nice. Forget them. Trinity was always my anchor, always pushing me towards peace. But this time, peace felt like surrender. The bitterness, usually a dull ache, sharpened into something cold and hard. They didn't want me there? Fine. But they wouldn't forget I existed. My severance package had just hit my account. A surprisingly generous sum, enough to cushion my job hunt for a few months. Or, I realised, enough to fund a very specific kind of revenge. I opened a new tab, searched for hotels near Ethan and Madison's resort in Greece, and filtered by Penthouse. My finger hovered over the Book Now button for the most lavish suite available, directly overlooking their private beach. Let's see if I really ruin their aesthetic, I muttered, hitting confirm. A few days later, after a long flight and a surprisingly smooth transfer, I found myself standing on the balcony of my penthouse suite. The air was warm, salty, and carried the faint scent of jasmine. Below, the sprawling resort where Ethan and Madison were hosting their wedding weekend glittered like a jewel box. From my vantage point, I could see the private beach, the infinity pools, and even the meticulously arranged seating for what I assumed was tonight's welcome cocktail hour. My unannounced presence felt like a delicious secret. My first order of business? Shedding the basic label. I'd packed strategically. No more off-the-rack dresses. I'd splurged on a stunning, deep red silk gown, the kind that made you feel like you owned the room, even if you were just standing on a balcony. Hair and makeup were done by a local stylist I'd booked discreetly, transforming me into someone who looked like they belonged in this opulent setting, not just observing it. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the quiet, overlooked Annabelle. This Annabelle had a plan. I pulled up Madison's Instagram. Unsurprisingly, her feed was a live stream of pre-wedding perfection. Paradise found, soaking up every moment before the big day. Son Ethan and Madison, Greek, wedding, luxury life. There were photos of her and Ethan laughing by the pool, Madison posing with her bridesmaids in matching robes, even a shot of the custom-designed welcome bags. Every post was a carefully constructed tableau of effortless glamour. It was nauseatingly perfect, and that's exactly what I intended to disrupt. I scrolled through the stories, noting the exact timing of their intimate cocktail hour, the precise angle of the sunset over the main terrace. As dusk settled, I heard voices drifting up from below. The cocktail hour was in full swing. I watched as Madison, in a flowing white dress, gestured animatedly to a woman with impossibly toned arms, probably Sella Davis, the bride's Pilates instructor, who Madison had mentioned on her stories. I just saw the weirdest thing. Madison's voice, surprisingly loud, carried clearly. "Some woman on that balcony over there, in a red dress. Who even is that? She looks totally out of place, like she's trying to be part of it." Sella chuckled. "Maybe a row guest, Madison? Don't let it bother you." "Oh, it would bother her?" I smiled, stepping a little further out onto the balcony, letting the red silk catch the last rays of the sun. The cocktail hour was a blur of champagne flutes and forced smiles below me. I stood on my balcony, a silent, crimson-clad observer. Every now and then, I'd subtly shift, ensuring I was in the background of any wide-angle shots Madison or her guests might be taking. I even managed a small, almost imperceptible wave when I saw Madison's cousin, Natalie, 31, looking up towards the penthouses, a curious expression on her face. Natalie was one of the few extended family members who had always been kind to me, though we hadn't seen each other much since childhood. She gave a tentative, almost imperceptible nod back. Interesting. A few minutes later, I saw Ethan. He was talking to Mitchell, 33, one of his groomsmen, looking relaxed. Then his eyes flicked up, scanning the resort, and landed on me. His smile faltered, then vanished completely. His jaw clenched. He said something to Mitchell, who glanced up too, then quickly looked away, a cynical smirk playing on his lips. Ethan's gaze was fixed on me, a mixture of shock and dawning fury. Madison, noticing Ethan's sudden rigidity, followed his line of sight. Her eyes widened, her perfectly coiffed head snapping towards me. Her face, usually so composed, contorted into a mask of pure rage. She started whispering furiously to Ethan, gesticulating wildly towards my balcony. Vanessa, my mother, ever vigilant, noticed the commotion. Her head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. When she saw me, she froze, a statue of horrified disbelief. The air below seemed to thicken with their collective panic. It was glorious. I pulled out my phone, a small smirk playing on my lips. Me. Showtime. They just spotted me. Trinity. Almost instantly. "OMG, Annabelle, you legend." What's their reaction? Me. Priceless. Ethan looks like he's seen a ghost. Madison's about to spontaneously combust. Mum looks like she just swallowed a lemon. Trinity. "Ha ha ha ha!" Nice. Don't stop now. What's next? The brunch tomorrow? The brunch? Of course. Another opportunity for a public display of their carefully constructed facade. Later that night, after the cocktail hour had wound down and the resort lights dimmed, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was a DM, not a text. From Ethan. Ethan. "What the hell are you doing here, Annabelle? You need to leave. Now. Mom and Dad are panicking." A cold thrill ran down my spine. Panicking. Good. Ethan's DM stared back at me from my phone screen, his demand to leave echoing in the quiet of my luxurious suite. For a split second, a flicker of doubt. Was this going too far? Was the satisfaction worth the inevitable fallout? Then I remembered why I was here. I opened my photo gallery and scrolled to a hidden album. There they were, screenshots of messages from Ethan, sent months ago, long before the wedding planning had even begun. Most were innocuous enough, brotherly check-ins, but then there were the others, the ones that started late at night, after he'd clearly had a few drinks, messages that veered from asking for my opinion on Madison's engagement ring to complaining about Madison's uptight nature, then subtly shifting to compliments about my free spirit, or how I was the only one who really got him. One in particular stood out, sent after a family dinner where Madison had been particularly dismissive of my career choices. "Honestly, Belle, you're too good for all this. You deserve someone who sees you for you, not some trophy." It wasn't explicitly sexual, but the undertone was deeply uncomfortable, a manipulative intimacy that felt designed to sow discord and keep me emotionally tethered to his drama. It wasn't just me. I remembered a conversation with Trinity a few months back. I opened our chat. Me. "Hey, remember when you mentioned Ethan messaged you late one night? Being weird?" Trinity. "Oh God, yeah. Like totally out of the blue. Something about how I was the only one who listened or some garbage. Why?" Me. "Just confirming a pattern." Trinity. Pattern? What kind of pattern? I didn't explain further. She'd understand soon enough. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just about me being excluded. This was about Ethan, the golden boy, building his perfect life on a foundation of casual cruelty and emotional manipulation, not just towards me, but towards others. His perfect wedding, his perfect bride, his perfect family, it was all a facade. And I had the cracks in my pocket. My outrage, which had been simmering, now boiled over. Leave? No. This wasn't just petty revenge anymore. This was about exposing the truth. I opened my email, found the wedding planner's contact information, and drafted a new message. Subject line: regarding tomorrow's brunch. I attached the most damning screenshot, the one where Ethan called Madison uptight and praised my free spirit in a way that felt far too personal. I set it to send anonymously to the entire wedding guest mailing list at 8 a.m. sharp, unless I cancelled it. Then, I RSVP'd to the brunch, also anonymously. I wasn't just going to crash it, I was going to blow it up. The next morning, the Aegean sun was already blazing by 9 a.m. I cancelled the scheduled email at 7:59 a.m., a split second before it was due to send. The threat was enough for now. I wanted to see their faces first. I dressed simply for the brunch. A tasteful sundress, sunglasses, a wide-brimmed hat. I looked like any other resort guest, which was exactly the point. The brunch was held on a sprawling terrace, overlooking the same sparkling sea. My family was already there, clustered together, looking tense. Ethan kept glancing around nervously, his eyes darting towards every new arrival. Madison was picking at a croissant, her usual cheerful demeanour replaced by a tight-lipped frown. Vanessa was whispering urgently to Frankie, her hand gripping his arm. They looked like they'd barely slept. Good. I grabbed a plate, piled it with fruit and pastries, and found a table slightly removed from the main group, but still within earshot. I watched them, a phantom guest in their perfect tableau. After a few minutes, I saw Madison excuse herself, heading towards the buffet. This was my chance. I casually walked over, pretending to examine the pastries next to her. "Beautiful spread, isn't it?" I said, my voice low and calm. Madison flinched, turning to face me. Her eyes, still narrowed from yesterday's sighting, widened as she recognized me up close. "Annabelle," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, just enjoying the resort," I replied, picking up a macaron. "Lovely place, though I hear some of the guests are less than lovely." I paused, letting that hang in the air. "You know, I was just thinking about how important honesty is in a marriage, especially when it comes to little secrets, like, say, late-night messages." Madison's face went white. Her eyes darted towards Ethan, who was now looking over, a worried frown on his face. "What are you talking about?" she hissed, trying to sound indignant, but her voice trembled. "Just a thought," I said, giving her a small, knowing smile. "Some things have a way of coming out, especially when you least expect them to." I turned and walked away, leaving her frozen by the buffet. A moment later, I saw her storm back to Ethan, her face contorted with fury. She started whispering to him, gesturing wildly. Ethan's eyes flicked to me, then back to Madison, his face a mask of disbelief and panic. Natalie, Madison's cousin, walked past my table, a small, almost imperceptible wink in my direction. She then deliberately stopped near Ethan and Madison, engaging them in a loud, distracting conversation about the weather, giving me time to watch the drama unfold. Suddenly, a woman in a crisp suit, the wedding planner, approached Madison, holding her phone. I saw the screen. The subject line was unmistakable. "Your groom has a secret." The wedding planner, a woman with a perpetually strained smile, held her phone out to Madison. Madison's eyes scanned the screen, and her face drained of all colour. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, even to me. The email had landed. Ethan, seeing the phone, stepped forward, his face a mask of confusion turning rapidly to fear. "What's going on?" "Your groom has a secret," the planner read aloud, her voice flat, clearly uncomfortable. She gestured to the attached screenshot. Madison spun on Ethan, the carefully constructed facade of their perfect relationship shattering in front of everyone. "What is this, Ethan? Who is Annabelle? Why are you calling me uptight and her free-spirited in the middle of the night?" Her voice rose with each word, attracting the attention of nearby guests. Ethan stammered, his usual smooth confidence evaporating. "Madison, honey, it's nothing. It's a joke. Just Annabelle being Annabelle, stirring up trouble. You know how she is." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a strangled cough. That was my cue. I rose from my table, my sundress flowing around me, and walked calmly towards the escalating scene. "Oh, it was a joke, Ethan," I said, my voice clear and carrying across the terrace. "Because I remember that message pretty clearly. It was sent at 2:17 a.m., after you'd been complaining about Madison's demands for the wedding. You said, and I quote, 'Honestly, Belle, you're too good for all this. You deserve someone who sees you for you, not some trophy.'" A collective gasp rippled through the brunch guests. Madison's jaw dropped. Ethan's face was beet red, his eyes wide with a desperate, trapped animal look. Vanessa, true to form, swooped in, her face a thundercloud. "Annabelle, what are you doing? This is family business. You are ruining everything." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. I pulled away. "Family business, Mum? Is that what we're calling it now? Years of enabling Ethan's casual cruelty? Years of making me feel like an inconvenience because I didn't fit your perfect little mold? You dismissed me, you ignored me, you left me out of my own brother's wedding because I didn't fit the aesthetic. And all the while, your golden boy was sending me these messages, undermining his own relationship, playing mind games with me just to feel better about himself." The silence that followed was deafening. Sella, the Pilates instructor, had her phone out, discreetly recording. Mitchell, the groomsman, just shook his head, a grim, knowing look on his face. Other guests started murmuring, some openly staring, others pretending to look at the view but clearly listening. One by one, they began to awkwardly gather their things and leave, the perfect brunch dissolving into chaos. Vanessa's face was contorted with a mixture of rage and humiliation. "You ungrateful girl! How dare you betray your family like this? You're the one causing shame." "Shame," I scoffed, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and something akin to exhilaration. "You want to talk about shame, Mum? The shame is yours, for raising a son who thinks he can treat people like disposable toys. The shame is yours, for teaching me that my worth was tied to how well I could disappear in Ethan's shadow. The shame is yours, for caring more about appearances than about your own daughter's well-being." Vanessa reeled back, as if I'd slapped her. Her face was a mask of shock, then fury. "You will regret this, Annabelle. You will be alone." But her words were drowned out by Madison's voice, now sharp with cold resolve. "There won't be a wedding." Everyone froze. Ethan, who had been trying to shrink into himself, looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. Madison stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Ethan, then sweeping over my parents. "This isn't about a joke, Ethan. It's about a pattern. It's about a man who clearly has no respect for me, for his family, or for himself. You want to play games? You want to manipulate people behind their backs? Fine, but you won't do it with my name or my family's reputation attached to yours. This marriage is off." She pulled the engagement ring from her finger, a dazzling diamond that must have cost a fortune, and dropped it onto the pristine white tablecloth with a soft clink. The sound was deafening in the sudden silence. Then, without another word, Madison turned and walked away, her head held high, leaving Ethan utterly shattered. Vanessa shrieked, a raw, guttural sound. "Ethan! Madison, come back, this is all her fault." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You did this, Annabelle, you ruined everything." "I didn't ruin anything, Mum," I said, my voice steady, despite the tremor in my hands. "I just pulled back the curtain, and for once I'm not ashamed. Not of myself, anyway." I turned, leaving my family in the wreckage of their perfect brunch. The remaining guests parted for me, some still filming, others just staring. As I walked, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. The air tasted sweeter, the sun felt warmer. When I reached the beach, Trinity was there, just as I knew she would be. She held up a bottle of champagne, a wide grin on her face. "To justice, Belle?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. "To not being basic," I corrected, and we clinked bottles. Later that day, as I scrolled through my phone, a link popped up from Trinity. It was a tabloid article, already trending. The headline blared, "The wedding that imploded. Thanks to the basic sister." The champagne on the beach tasted like victory, but the aftertaste was complicated. The tabloid article, "The wedding that imploded, thanks to the basic sister," was just the beginning. The internet, predictably, went wild. Videos of Madison's speech, my confrontation with Vanessa, and Ethan's stunned silence were everywhere. My social media, once a quiet corner of the internet, exploded. There was a deluge of support, strangers commending my courage, sharing their own stories of toxic families. But there was also a torrent of hate, accusing me of being a jealous, attention-seeking monster. It was a lot to process, even for someone who had just orchestrated a public family implosion. Back home, the silence from my parents was deafening. Vanessa, true to her word, had cut me off completely. My calls went unanswered, my texts unread. Ethan, I heard through the grapevine, mostly from Mitchell, who now seemed to find a perverse amusement in the whole saga, had gone into hiding, his reputation in tatters. Madison, on the other hand, was trending for her dignified exit, leveraging the scandal into a new wave of online sympathy. She was getting endorsement deals. Of course she was. The initial high of revenge slowly gave way to a quiet loneliness. I had wanted them to see me, to acknowledge my existence, but the cost was severing the last fragile threads of my birth family. It was a strange, bittersweet power. My story was finally mine, not something to be edited or dismissed by them. Trinity, bless her, was a constant. She was there for the late-night calls, the endless debriefs, the quiet moments when the weight of it all felt too heavy. She never judged, just listened and reminded me that I had done what I needed to do. A week after I got back, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was Natalie, Madison's cousin. She'd found my number through a mutual relative. "Hey, Annabelle," she started, her voice a little hesitant. "Just wanted to say, good for you. Seriously, Madison was a piece of work and Ethan, well, you know, I always thought you were the coolest one anyway." We talked for an hour, sharing stories about the Joseph family's particular brand of dysfunction. It was refreshing. A new connection forged in the ashes of the old. I never wanted forgiveness from them. I just